Hello, everyone. This is our first actual notes for the unit. This is what is life. This is the one essential question you have for this unit. We've talked about skills before, and then we talked about data collection. Well, the data collection was the skills, and then the other notes were the focus, just note taking. So this is actually is our Living Earth content. So our essential question, remember that you're setting these up for the Cornell note style. So your essential question is going to be, how can you identify a living organism? You're going to put a column on the left-hand side of your page, and then the body will be to the right of that, and then you will write a summary when you are complete with the notes. Again, you can pause this video at any time if you missed anything, but also make sure that you write down questions. So if you want to come back and visit me during tutorial or during class, you'll have an opportunity to do that. All right, so take a minute. There's a section in your notes to think about the questions below. Write your answers in the week 3 packet and give a piece of evidence to support each answer. I'm just going to go ahead and give you a few minutes to do that, and then we will get back together. So the questions are your hair and fingernails living things? Are all things that move living things? Is there a difference between non-living and dead in scientific terms? And then are all non-living things man-made? So what I'd like for you to do is to pause the video and spend a few minutes of doing that. Okay, so after the few minutes that you have wrote those answers down, the whole idea is to just, based on your knowledge and not move too far ahead. All right, so the 2 terms that we're going to talk about during this class, as far as when we're talking about living versus non-living, is biotic versus abiotic. So biotic refers to a living or once living organism. So if you come across a dead tree, that is still considered biotic, even though it's technically not living, but it was once living, so we still consider that biotic. Abiotic is anything that's non-living factor in the environment, and we say factor what will affect particular organisms that live in the environment, right? So how much water is available, let's say, even the temperature of the water, or is it salt water, fresh water? Air, the temperature of the air, how much precipitation when they get, how much sun is available to the organism, things like that. And then the rocks, what is it, a rocky area? Is it sparse? Is it grassy? Well, grassy is a biotic factor, but there's maybe not a lot of rocks, there might be a lot of vegetation. So we look at those things as abiotic factors that affect organisms in a particular ecosystem. All right, so we have characterized 9 characteristics of life, right? And it differs from from scientist to scientist, but for this class, we're just going to go ahead and go based on these 9 characteristics. Now, they don't have to have these characteristics all through their life, for instance, in order for them to be considered living. And you'll see, like, some things go through different stages of reproductive cycles, so they're not always reproductive, but we'll go ahead and so we're going to use this acronym, REACH and GO, right? You can notice that there's 2 R's and then REACH and then N, GO, REACH and GO. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 characteristics of life. So if you can remember this, hopefully you can remember all 9 of them. So we're going to start to number the first R, response to stimulus. All right, so something that causes or accelerates the physical or behavioral activity or response. So here's a picture of our eyes dilating, right? If it's sunny, our eyes close up to restrict the light that comes in. If they're wide, then they are trying to get more light in. Okay, here is the plant. You can see that it's bending towards the light because it's responding to the stimulus. Reproduction. All right, so the ability to create offspring. So we'll break it up into two different categories. Sexual reproduction is when you have two parents that create an offspring, which is a combination, so they're going to be identically different, genetically different. And then asexual is that one parent makes a copy of themselves, so asexual reproduction, right? So this is sexual reproduction, and then we have a picture of like a bacteria that's going through asexual reproduction, all right? So they're usually more simple organisms, but that's not always the case. Energy. They need to use energy, capture and use, right? Eating, physical activity, for etc. So for instance, all these organisms need energy to survive. So energy use, right? So they need to get food somehow. Plants just, they get it on their own, but they still need energy. They're able to adapt, right? A trait that is inherited in your DNA and is passed down from generation to generation. So, we're going to start talking about maybe evolution a little bit, but some type of adaptation, right? Where you have a trait that makes you more able to survive in a particular environment and then reproduce. So that's the ability to adapt. All right, opposable thumbs and then wings on a bird, right? So those are two adaptation. Cells. All living things are made of one or more cells, right? So all organisms, whether they're unicellular, right, like bacteria, or humans, which we have billions of cells, so we're all living organisms. So the H part, homeostasis. Homeostasis is defined by maintaining the ability to maintain an internal balance by responding to the environment, right? So for us, you talk about temperature, what happens when we get too hot, our body sweats, things like that. It tries to cool us back down. If it gets too cold, we start to shiver. We start to try to get that temperature back up. And same with blood pressure. Blood pressure is the same thing. Heart rate, things like that. All types of homeostasis examples. And we have this and right. All right. And so they have to be made of some type of nucleic acids. Mostly organisms are made of DNA, right? Deoxyribonucleic acid, or RNA, ribonucleic acids, right? So we consider to have both. So most more organisms have both DNA and RNA, right? So this is a picture of DNA and then the RNA, right? So you have to have some type of genetic material. You need to be able to grow and develop, right? So you need to increase in size, or you need to create specialized cells. Now, when we talk about bacteria, they can't, their cells grow a little bit, but they certainly don't have specialized cells. So this is, one of those things that even though bacteria can't really grow, in a sense, they are considered living still, right? So these are one of those ones that, it may or may not apply to all organisms, but, they do have the ability to grow. You have to have parts that do specific jobs. Again, if you're a unicellular organism, you don't have specific cells that do jobs, but you do have some type of a digestive ability. You have the ability to create proteins, as far as the bacteria. So there has to be some organization, right? So in our system, like for instance, multicellular, you're going to have a bunch of organelles, so like this is a protein or a fat, and all those different things are going to form a cell. And those cells, you have a group of cells together, it's going to form a tissue. You have a bunch of different tissues together, and you're going to form organs, and you have a bunch of organs, and you're going to create organ systems. So you can think of like the reproductive system or respiratory system. Those are our organ systems, right? So this is actually a bacteria, right? You can see it has ribosomes, it has some genetic material, it has a cytoplasm where cell reactions can take place. cell wall. So that's considered living. And then we have, our different organ systems. Okay, so we'll reach and go, right? So that's the characteristics. So you talk about atoms versus molecules. Atoms is the smallest unit of matter. Molecules is a group of atoms bonded together. So we're talking about molecules. We're not talking about living things, right? Because we're talking about it has to be at least a cell, and a bunch of molecules together are going to form a cell. All right, so what I'd like for you to do, and we'll go ahead and do this in class, so it will be more of an in-class thing. So there will be 5 statements, and you will have to choose whether you agree or disagree with the statement, all right? So maybe what I'll do is I'll just go through them real fast, and then you can go ahead. So, and then we'll talk about it in class. Miracle-Gro, it's a plant fertilizer. Do you agree or disagree that it's biotic? A mule, is mule biotic? Agree or disagree? And I'm just going to go back and choose whether you just no explanation right now. This is a tough one. Agree or disagree on a chicken egg. This is abiotic. We sort of threw a curve instead of is it non-living? Right? Plant seed, is it biotic or abiotic? And then I want you, we'll maybe watch this video, but I do want, it's a couple minutes, and it's Julia Roberts. It's a really interesting perspective on nature. All right, and then that's it. I will see you on, actually, I don't know when y'all post this on Friday, I think, so I'll see first period on Monday, and then 246, I'll see you on Tuesday. I hope everybody has had a good weekend, and we shall talk to you shortly.